Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Stacking the Box NFL Week 2 Sunday pregame show with BetSided. I am Matt Verderame. He is Iain MacMillan. We will touch on every game, not only today, but the doubleheader on Monday night, the Week 2 doubleheader, which still feels weird. Usually it's Week 1. But that's neither here nor there. First of all, we've got to break down how we did in Week 1, which Ian's got those results for us. And second of all, I'd like to let Ian know that the Kansas City Chiefs are 2-0 and that they are rolling along just fine. Ian, welcome in. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I will comment about the Chiefs here first. I got a couple things to say. Number one, their defense so far 2 weeks in a little bit better than what I expected, and their offense looked really good in week 1. Maybe not quite as good in week 2.
Correct.
But they are moving on a lot better without Tyreek Hill. I will say a second thing though. And that is that I didn't know Chiefs fans were this soft, to be honest. Like all I said, Chiefs, they might just win 10 games this year. Sorry, guys. Maybe they'll only win 10 games this year. And then I got just destroyed in the comments. People coming after me. I don't know what I'm talking about. Sorry, guys. Maybe I don't think the Chiefs are going to go 17-0. My bad, Chiefs fans.
It's a petty group. It's a group that's been hurt for many years before Mahomes showed up. But also, I learned that about another fan base, so I actually respect now. Have you ever crossed Duval, the Jags fan base?
I have not. No, I've come into it with a lot of
man. Years ago, they had Marone as the head coach and Bortles as the quarterback, and I was like, they're gonna suck, which wasn't exactly a really like out there opinion. And Jags fans was just, how could you say that? Go to hell. The Jags ended up going to the AFC title game that year. And oh my God, man, I heard it at the end of the time. They weren't even that good. They were like 9-7, but in any event, I was way off. But yes, Chiefs fans, a petty group. All right, let's get into week 2. Chiefs Chargers already in the books. How did we do in terms of our week 1 calls?
Well, Matt, I'll be honest. I was supposed to add yours up. I haven't done that yet. So I'm going to do that during the show. By the end of the show, I'll have your week 1 record here.
Okay. You know how to do the units. I don't know how to do the units.
Yes.
I know I have 7 and 8 in my picks. That I know, but I don't know the units.
Yes, you went 7 and 8. I went 8 and 7. I did lose Thursday Night Football, but that was before we recorded the show. So overall, in week 16, I finished up 0.86 units. So small profit. But a profit nonetheless. So, and if you didn't tail Thursday night, if you only tailed the picks I gave it on the show, it would have been a little bit more than that because that included the Thursday Night Football loss. So, small profit for me. I will do up your profit here as we go along. I'll have that by the end of the show.
If we're not including Thursday night, then whatever. If we did, I actually had I'm trying to think what the Rams. I had them losing, but I think I had like the Bills money on. That's neither here nor there. Let's move on. It's irrelevant. All right. First game of the day, at least that we're breaking down, all 1 o'clock games to start here. We have the Browns at home opener, taking on the New York Jets with Joe Flacco. The line has moved to Cleveland, favored by 6.5. It was 5.5 earlier in the week. Total 48.5. You and I in lockstep here. Why don't you tell the fine folks out there what you picked?
Yeah, I'm going to take the Jets here, and this is one of those bets where, I was on the Jets last week. I believe you were on the Ravens, and I said it's very possible I was going to feel stupid by the end of the day, and I did. But here I am making basically the same pick on the same team here, obviously taking on the Browns instead here. But the Browns in week 1, a big concern I have for the Browns was their passing attack. Dead last in yards per pass attempt. No, Jacoby Brissett looked terrible. Now, they did run the ball all over the Panthers, but the one good thing that the Jets did in week 1 against the Ravens was stop the run. They kept the 3 yards per carry. So if the Jets can even contain the Browns' rush attack even a little bit, I think they can keep this one close because they're not going to win this game on the arm of Jacoby Brissett. So I'm going to take the Jets in the points.
I totally agree with you. I have the Jets. I got the Jets at plus 5.5, but I still feel fine about that. Look, to me, that's exactly why I went that way. The Jets stopped the Ravens from running the ball. If you can stop that team from running the ball, you can stop anybody, okay? Because you have the ultimate threat, Lamar Jackson, back there. And then on top of that, the Browns couldn't throw for crap all day long. Why all of a sudden are they going to do it against the Jets? So I don't love the Jets at all. I made that clear week 1. I don't think the Jets are going to score a lot of points in this game. But if you're telling me I've got 2 offenses that are really limited in any kind of explosive plays, I'm going to take the points, especially when the points are up over 5. So I get it. I think the Browns are going to win, but I think this is a 19-16 type of game. I do. So I'm with you. I thought about just taking the under in this game. The under also seems like a really obvious play here. But I decided to go with the Jets and the points. We'll see if the Jets screw me. Last week, they were exactly who I thought they were. I felt good about that. All right. Moving on, going to the NFC, going over to Ford Field, Detroit. Detroit had their home opener last week, lost to shootout 38-35 to Philly. This week at home against another NFC East team, the Washington Commanders. The spread is now Detroit being favored by a point, was 1.5 earlier this week. Total is again 48.5, same as it was with the Jets and the Browns. Do you have the Lions, who, by the way, this is the first time in 24 games they're a favorite? Do you have them as the covering favorite, or do you like Washington here?
No, I like the Lions. I've been low on Washington all off season. I didn't really think they played that well in week 1, despite getting the win against the Jaguars. Even if you look at yards per play, they're outperformed by Jacksonville. Wentz looked like Carson Wentz with 2 of his bad interceptions. They didn't run the ball effectively either. 3.0 yards per carry on 28 rushes. And the Lions, their defense kind of was susceptible. They did cover against the Eagles, but their offense looked good. I mean, 5.8 yards per play against an Eagles defense, which is much better than Washington's defense, in my opinion. So I'm just kind of sticking to my preseason, my offseason belief of both of these teams. Neither of them are great, but I think Washington's one still, even though they won week 1, I'm still sticking to my feeling, my prediction that Washington is like a bottom 5 team in the NFL, whereas Lions might be a little bit better than that. So I'll lay the point, especially with them at home. I got them a -1.5 before it moved down half a point to 1.
So I'm taking the over in this game. You know what? Here's my rationale. So I think that the Lions are going to score points. Washington always gets talked about as this great defense. Washington's defense was awful last year. They don't have Chase Young. It's indoors. It's a fast surface. Like I'm not overly confident about this. I wasn't confident about anything in this game. So I said, I'm just going to take points. I think there might be some, 27-23, something like that. Washington did score against Jacksonville's defense, and the Lions' defense stinks. So I think it's going to be a game where Wentz can throw the ball some. Who's guarding McLaurin? Who's guarding Dotson? I don't know. Okudah? Maybe? Who knows? So I like points being scored here. I think it's going to be a fairly high-scoring game. Goff always scares me taking the over, but they scored 35 last week. Yeah. And they've got real weapons now. Like Hawkinson can play. The backs are good. I know Jameson Williams not there yet. I understand all that. They got Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I actually think the total is about where it should be, but I'm going to take the over by a couple of points. I think the two teams combined to get us over the line. If I had to pick a winner, I'm actually with you with Detroit, but Detroit has been an underdog since every game since I was about 6. So I felt odd laying points with the Lions.
Yeah, I would say the only thing that concerns me a little bit, both about the over pick and my Lions pick, is Lions still have some injuries on their offensive line.
They do.
Yeah.
Ragnow's out, which is a concern. All right, NFC South. I actually think this might be the best game of the whole day. The New Orleans Saints opening up at the Superdome. It is going to be deafening there. The Buccaneers rolling into town. Of course, the only team last week not to give up a touchdown. They won 19-3 over Dallas. The spread has really not moved at all this week. It has been Tampa Bay -2.5 on the road, over under 43.5. And of course, no weather to worry about in the dome. I'll actually kick this one off here. So I got the Saints at +2.5. It was 3 in the very beginning of the week. Look, I think the Saints are going to outright win the game. Tampa is so beat up offensively right now. Donovan Smith isn't playing. Obviously, Aaron Stinney's out for the year up front. Ryan Jensen's out for, if not the entire year, most of it. Julio Jones, feel bad for the guy, but not exactly a shocker. He's not playing. Chris Godwin's not playing. Mike Evans is playing, as is Russell Gage. They're both hurt. I don't know what to do with that. I think the Saints are going to be in the backfield the entire game. The Saints can play defensively. They're very, very good on defense. I think they're going to live in the backfield. And if they live in the backfield, as much as I respect Brady, who scares you catching the ball? Evans is it. You double him, you take him out, you put Latimer on him, it's ball game. There's nowhere else to go. I don't like the Kamara's out. That cropped up in the middle of the week. He practiced fully Wednesday, and then he got hurt, and he's been out. But I got to tell you, man, I think the Saints, if this game was in Tampa, I'd feel differently. Then it might be one of those things where I might have stayed away from it. Might have gone total here. I like the Saints not only to cover, I think the Saints are going to win the game.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm just taking the Saints to cover this one personally. Now, I did it. It was at 3 when the line first got released last Sunday night, so I jumped on that. I still like Saints plus 2.5, and even if you want to take a money line, I wouldn't argue against that too much. You talked about the Saints defense and how they're going to be likely in the backfield of the Buccaneers all game, and I agree with that because don't forget. Buccaneers, yeah, they kind of beat up on the Cowboys, but they didn't even score a touchdown until the third quarter.
No, they were not impressive.
No, not impressive. But the Saints offense, I know obviously my poor Falcons blew a lead once again. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit more when we get to the Falcons game. But Saints offense was actually extremely effective. 6.8 yards per play, the 4th most in the NFL in week 1. Obviously, Kamara being out does hurt them with that, but Michael Thomas looked great. Michael Thomas' first game, it feels like we've seen him play forever, and he looked fantastic against A.J. Terrell, who obviously I'm a big fan of, who I think is one of the best corners in the NFL. So
it has to be said, Jay Glazer just tweeted this out. This is interesting and pertinent to this game. Jameis Winston is playing with 4 back fractures today.
What?
That's not ideal. From L1 down to L4, playing in a lot of pain, but wearing extra padding. That is concerning.
My bet's locked in, so it's too late now.
I'm not changing it now, boys, but
now it makes sense. His post-game press conference last week when he was just like, I feel pain everywhere. Makes sense.
That's not ideal. Yikes. That said, we're going to find out who's more wounded today because both teams are just beat to hell. Yikes. All right, let's stay in the NFC, somewhat in the NFC South. We go to MetLife Stadium. The Giants, it's a 1 o'clock kick. They're hosting the Panthers. Giants a 1.5-point favorite in the game. Total 43.5. Sir, your thoughts on the G-Men and the Panthers in New Jersey?
This is actually my favorite total bet of the day here. I got it at 42.5. It has gone up a point to 43.5. Obviously, I still like that number, but I like the over in this game quite a bit, especially if you look at the Giants game last week. If you just look at the final score against the Titans, by the way, called that upset. No big deal.
You're right. I was wrong.
Giants averaged 6.8 yards per play. They're tied with the Saints for 3rd most in the NFL last week. The only teams who got more yards per play were the Chiefs and the Bills in week 1. This Giants team moved the ball. Now, obviously, if Daniel Jones is going to keep throwing interceptions in the end zone, that's going to hurt an over bet for sure. But the Giants moved the ball. And the Panthers, they were fine offensively, 5.2 yards per play, but that was against the Browns defense, who everyone knows is one of the best defenses in the NFL. Now a much easier, weaker defense than the Giants are going to face. I think we're going to see a lot of points in this one. I was kind of shocked to see the total was set as low as it is.
I'm riding with the Giants here, and that's a reversal for me because going into the season, I felt like the Giants were basically waving the white flag. They got rid of Martinez in the middle of their defense. The offseason was a lot about paring down the salary cap because it had to after what they were left with Dave Gettleman's mess. I got to tell you, though, of all the things I saw week 1, now I'm not going to sit here and talk about that. I think the Giants are like a 10-win team. I don't believe that. But Brian Daboll, who I liked as a head coach hire, I wrote about it when they hired him. I thought he'd be a really good hire. I just thought it would take a little while based off of the situation he walked into. You can tell those players really like him. Like watching the game, rewatching the game as I did on Tuesday after the week was over. They really there was a certain a palpable belief with them. Now look, they're not talented enough. They're not going to go out and start beating the Rams on the road. I don't think that's going to happen. But I do believe that I think they're going to win this game. What are the Panthers that you're so impressed by? They're going to roll here. Now I will say, if McCaffrey goes off, it wouldn't shock me. Okay, I don't love the Giants' defensive personnel. I also have no faith in Baker and could see him throwing 3 picks in this game. So I am rolling with the Giants. I think at home it's going to be a crowd that's very excited. They showed fight. They're 1-0. That was the other thing about that Giants game. They got down 13-0 in that game against Tennessee. And I thought for sure, just their past history, the last, 8 to 10 years, I thought they were going to roll over like dogs and just get beat by 30 points. And they didn't do it. It showed me a lot. Maybe I'm buying into it a little much. Maybe I'm drinking a little Kool-Aid. I like the Giants to win this game, -1.5, swallow the points. I think they win it by a field goal.
By the way, Saquon Barkley might be back, by the way.
He looked pretty good back last
week. Fantastic in week 1.
He looked amazing. Great effort by him. Good for him. I'm happy to see him back and healthy.
Yes.
It's been a while. It's been too long.
Yeah, he's fun to watch.
All right, let's go to a game that's going to set offensive football back about 100 years. It's a 1 o'clock game in Pittsburgh. The Steelers hosting the Patriots. Ian, I want your take on this because you know the betting markets way more than I do. Not even a question. New England's been favored all week. It was 1.5 in some books, 1 point at one point. Then now it's all the way up to 2.5. Okay, weather doesn't appear to be an issue. Why the hell is New England favored in this game? What is the reasoning?
I think the New England's just a better team. I'm on the Patriots in this game.
Based on what?
Based on several things, like last week. I mean, let's be honest. The Steelers had a +5 turnover differential, and they still barely won the game. They should have lost the game on several occasions.
I agree with you.
They averaged 4.4 yards per play. They couldn't run the ball. 3.4 yards per carry. 4.9 yards per pass. That was an ugly offensive performance for the Steelers. Yes.
I agree with you. Like I watched the whole game live and it was in deep pain as they wouldn't cut away to the Chiefs game because we had to sit there and watch the Steelers plot up and down the field in overtime. But the Steelers have a really good defense. Even without TJ Watt, they have a very, very good defense.
I don't agree. I think their defense is not good. Below average.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't think that team's good defensively?
No. If you look at their statistics from last year, they're dead last in opponent yards per carry. Teams average 5 yards per carry against the Steelers defense.
I understand that. They'd get after your quarterback now. Like they can play. I mean, all right, so we disagree that's maybe the crux
with
of
TJ Watt. TJ Watt without TJ Watt, third bottom half unit, in my opinion, easily.
I mean, certainly a hit, no question. He's a great player, but I still like Highsmith. I like Hayward a lot, Fitzpatrick. Anyway, to me, this is the line I just couldn't understand this. Now, I took the under. I went under 40.5 because I don't trust Trubisky at all. So I said, well, I'm not sure who's going to win, but I thought this line would be like a pick 'em. I'm not even shilling for the Steelers to have been like a 3-point favorite or anything. I just thought the line would be a pick. Now, earlier in the week, as your bet here shows, it was a 1-point line. So It wasn't that far off. I'm just shocked it's gotten bet up this much. Did anyone watch the Pats week 1 against Miami? They sucked. I watched every snap of that game. They can't block. Matt Patricia calling the offensive plays. You're not going to believe this. Not a good idea. Okay. They looked like shit the entire afternoon. Mac Jones had a 9.7 QBR, and I got to tell you, he earned it. They were brutal in that game. Defensively, they were fine. Offensively, they were hideous. Which all leads me to believe, because everything you said about the Steelers is true as well. They were god-awful offensively. Couldn't score a point. This game screams like 17-13. I would be floored, unless there's a bunch of defensive or special teams scored in this game. I'd be shocked if this game goes over.
Yeah.
They can't. Neither one of them can score a point.
Now, what I would say, and you see that on the graphic, I took New England when they were -1 earlier in the week. I set the line personally at Patriots -2.5, which is where it's at right now. So if you're actually looking at it, like if I didn't have this bet placed already, if I was just betting it today, I would actually go with the under as well. I like that pick too. Both offenses. I took the Patriots because I actually think Patriots defense is better than the Steelers defense, to be honest. So that's why I lean the Patriots as slight favorites. But now I think the spread is set at the right number. So betting it today, I think I'd go the under because it's just I can't see either of these offenses doing much.
Can't score.
No,
can't score a point.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I watched the Steelers game live, went back and watched the Pats on Monday. It was brutal football. Like, to your point, because you're right, like watching the Steelers live against Cincinnati, like you're +5 in the turnover, and you can't win this game by like 7 to 10 points. I mean, they scored on one of the turnovers. It was a pick 6.
Right. Yeah.
Like, how can you not just win this game? It was unbelievable, and it wasn't to their credit. They harassed Burrow the entire. We're going to get to the Bengals here in a minute. But the Bengals offensively, look, man, they're going to break day with Cooper Rush being the quarterback in Dallas. that line better get better. We'll leave it at that. All right, let's move on. Stay on schedule here. AFC South matchup. I know that's what everybody lives for in life. We've got Jacksonville at home taking on the all of a sudden very injured Indianapolis Colts. No Michael Pittman, no Shaq Leonard. That's not a surprise. No Alec Pierce in this game. Kenny Moore was questionable, as DeForest Buckner was as well. The line all week, 4 to 4.5. Now Indianapolis, only a 3-point favorite on the road. Rain in the forecast down in Jacksonville. The total at 43.5. Your take on this game?
Yeah, well, one thing is I got a bad line on this game. A lot of the ones we were talking about earlier, I'm on a better line than where it's at right now. I'm on Colts -4, so it's moved in the wrong direction, in my opinion. And I think a big reason that is because of the injuries for the Colts. That certainly has me a little bit worried. But still, at the same time, I still like the Colts, so I still like them at the current number of -3, even with all the injuries out, because Colts were 8.5-point favorite to 7.5-point favorites against the Texans last week. Now only 3-point favorites against the Jaguars. I understand the injuries, but are the Jaguars like 5 points better than the Texans? Like, I certainly don't think so. And even though they played to a tie with the Texans in week 1, they did severely outplay them. 5.7 yards gained per play on offense, 4.4 given up on defense. Obviously, untimely turnovers and not being able to score when you get in the red zone hurt them. But I don't think the same kind of issues are going to show up this week. Also, I don't know why everyone's so high on Jacksonville. All offseason, people were hyping up the Jaguars. They didn't look good in week 1, really. They kind of blew that game, which should have been a winnable game against a bad Washington team. Trevor Lawrence still hasn't looked good. So I just can't convince myself to bet on the Jaguars. I'll lay the points at the Colts.
All right, I got Jacksonville +4.5 earlier this week, and I'm going to roll with it. Look, you're right. They're not 5 points better than the Texans, but they don't have to be because the Colts couldn't beat the Texans last week. So the Colts tied the Texans and needed a miracle to get that game into overtime after being that 20-3 late in the game. I am one of these people who thought Jacksonville might be like a 7-win team this year. Not a playoff team, but I thought they'd be a lot better because of Doug Peterson. I still think that. I would not be shocked at all if Jacksonville wins this game. I'm not taking that. I'm not picking that. I'm taking Jacksonville +4.5. I think they cover. I think it could be. I think it could be a very close game, one way or the other. But what did Indianapolis? Now I know you have them as your Super Bowl pick, so you're like ride or die here with Matt Ryan and company. I picked them to win the division, and I still think they will. They though, like the injury to Pittman scares me specifically. Yeah, because they got nobody else, man. Yeah. Like there is nobody else.
Paris Campbell is their top option today.
Oh my God! And it's just one of those things where as a defense now, you're like, well, they just got to run the ball constantly, and if they can't do that, they're screwed, right? I mean, they're not going to throw the ball. If they throw the ball against anybody without Pittman, the other team should be forced to resign as an NFL franchise. So I like Jacksonville +4.5 as it was earlier in the week. I think they cover. Do they win? I don't know. It's in play, but I like the +4.5 for me for Jacksonville to get that cover at home. If it was in India, I'd feel differently. All right, let's get to the last of the 1 o'clock games. I actually think, along with the Tampa New Orleans game, one of the best. Although now with Jameis Winston having a broken back that he's playing through, this might be the best game. 1 o'clock in Charm City, Baltimore, the Ravens hosting the Miami Dolphins. The Ravens, that line has stayed tried and true all week long. 3.5-point favorites at home. Total is 43.5. Beautiful weather in Baltimore. 78 and sunny, so the weather should not play a factor. The line was 4.5 at the very beginning of the week. I know that's where you got it. I got it at the line it's at now. Your thoughts on Miami and Baltimore, two 1-0 AFC teams?
Yeah, I'm on the Dolphins to cover here. I even still like them at the 3.5 number. I'm just still not as high on the Ravens as a lot of people are. I know if people out there were watching Red Zone like I was on Sunday and then looked at the final score, it looked like the Ravens completely just dismantled the Jets. But really, statistically, there were some red flags. One that I brought up earlier when talking with the Jets game this week is the Ravens struggled running the ball. Was that the Jets being able to stop the run very effectively, or was that kind of some red flags with the Ravens rush offense? Only 3-point yards per carry. And yeah, Lamar Jackson completed a couple of big scoring plays from not so great coverage, kind of half busted coverage.
Correct.
He only completed 17 of 30 passes, and he also threw an interception. So it wasn't the greatest performance by Lamar Jackson either, outside of those couple of good throws. So I think the Ravens are deserving of being favorites. I'd set the line at 2.5 though, just under that magic number of 3. And to be fair, Miami's offense, a lot of the same things that I just said about the Baltimore offense, you can kind of say about Miami too. Outside of a couple of big plays, they didn't look great either. They couldn't run the ball effectively. But Tyreek Hill certainly kind of displayed his ability to be a game changer in that week 1 game. So, I think it's going to be a close game. I got the Dolphins plus 4.5, but I'd like it at 3.5 too.
Okay. All right. Look, first, before I give my pick, I see a few comments. By the way, thanks for everybody who's watching the show. Thanks for commenting. Really appreciate it. If you could give the video a like, and if you want to subscribe to the channel, that wouldn't hurt either. But thank you so much for being here on this Sunday mornings. We're about a half an hour, 35 minutes or so away from kick. The early games, I see RWT says, Verderame, great insight as always. This is my Sunday pregame show from now on. I appreciate that you're sticking with us. Thank you so much. Got my buddy IOFIV. Hello from the UK. Hey, man. That's dedication, watching from the UK. Appreciate you for being here. Thank you so much. Also got W. Smith says, I'm going to ride with all of your agreements today, fellas. Thanks. Sir, good luck to you and Godspeed. Don't bet what you can't. All right. So for me, this Baltimore-Miami game, you're right. The red flag I have in this game is easy. And I actually wrote about it over Fanside. I had a column go up Friday. So the Ravens lost to the Dolphins last year, 22-10 on Thursday Night Football, when Brian Flores and company just said, excuse the language, fuck it. We're going to blitz you on every down. We're going to cover zero you to death. We have no fear of any of your receivers. We're not going to let him run out of the pocket. We're going to overwhelm the line of scrimmage. And it's just going to be, he's got to get the ball out quick. And it was a train wreck. Baltimore could not do anything against it. I've got to believe that Baltimore has adjusted to that somehow, some way, whether it's more screen game, whether it's more running the ball. However, you look at Miami's defense. Miami has a very, very good secondary. And I worry in this game that Baltimore is not going to get a lot of separation down the field. And this is going to become a game where if the Ravens can't run the ball, they're in a lot of trouble. However, I'm taking Ravens minus 3.5 for 2 reasons. Here's the reasons.
All right.
I think the Ravens are going to blitz Tua out of the stadium in this game. The Dolphins could not block at all against the Pats. The Ravens are a better defensive front, in my opinion. Okay, that's number one. Now, I respect the Pats front. They have Barmore. They have Judon. I think the Ravens are going to get home. Tua was not overly impressive. He wasn't bad, but he wasn't impressive in week 1. He was very just okay. He was fine. And I think the Ravens now with Peters back can match up with their receivers to a degree. So that's number one. Number 2, I think Baltimore at home in this game, I expect them to run the ball a little bit better. Now, J.K. Dobbins is still inactive. I understand that. Okay, you're going to see a lot of Kenyon Drake. I trust Baltimore. I think the other reason I should say, a third reason quick, I think Baltimore might force Tua into a mistake or two in this game. And if they do, like a turnover, that could be a difference. I will admit this game, I think, is one of those that could have gone either way. I almost just went Baltimore money line, but I'm going to take Baltimore to cover the 3.5. I think they win by a touchdown.
I threw me a curveball there. You were saying every red flag for the Ravens, and then you took them. So
sometimes you got to do it. Sometimes you got to lay out the whole case and then just be honest about where you're at.
I like it.
All right. Speaking about being honest where you're at, you should be going to meetings for this. The 11:20. Excuse me, the 11:20. I'm looking at a rundown. The 4:05 Eastern time game. The Rams at home. They're coming off the mini bye after getting thrashed by the Bills. They are at home. Minus 460 on the money line. They take on your Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons, who looked really good for a while and then looked like the Falcons. The Rams, a 10-point favorite in the game. That line has dropped a little bit from where it started out at. It was about 10.5 at the beginning of the week. Total, 46.5. You and I on the same wavelength here. Your thoughts on the Rams, your Falcons at SoFi.
Yeah, I don't need to say too much about this game. The Falcons stink. I hate my own team.
They're not.
I got the Rams at minus 10.5 here. The biggest weakness for the Falcons offensively is the interior of their offensive line, and now the interior of their offensive line has to go up against Aaron Donald. It's going to get ugly. Aaron Donald might get 12 sacks today. The Falcons, and I mentioned this earlier when talking about the Saints game, they allowed 6.8 yards per play to the Saints. Don't overreact to how bad the Rams looked in week 1. They will look much better today. They will do what they want against this Falcons defense. They're at home. It's just going to be it's going to get ugly. The Rams aren't as bad as they looked in week 1, and the Falcons aren't as good as they looked in week 1. It's as easy as that, in my opinion.
So, all right. So I agree with you. Let's not even waste time. Like I took the Rams minus 10.5. I think the Rams are going to win this game by 17 points. That being said, let me lay out the case for your Falcons to cover. I can't make a case for them to win, but let me lay out the Falcons case to cover. The Rams' offensive line is a train wreck. And it might be even worse because now Brian Allen, their center, is not in there. And you have Grady Jarrett up front. I know the rest of the pass rush isn't great, but it was good against the Saints. And the Saints line is pretty good. And they got home, actually, time and again against New Orleans. I also think that the one strength the Falcons have is the corners can play. Hayward is very good. Terrell is very good. Can they handle Kupp? Can they handle Allen Robinson? We're going to find out. I would argue they have better corners than the Bills do right now. Right? I mean, right without Tre'Davious White, I would argue the Falcons have better corners. Now, the rest of the team in Buffalo might be a little bit better than the rest of the team in Atlanta, which is why I think the Rams are going to pull away with this game. But the other case would be that can the Falcons run the ball enough to stay on schedule? That's got to be the case. Now, neither one of us believes in that case, which is why we're both taking the Rams to cover a double-digit spread. But that would be my case. If you want to take Atlanta, it's got to be that, hey, they can limit the passing game a little bit, run the ball some, shorten the game, so on and so forth. So, but we're both in the same camp here, which is going to be a theme actually for the next couple of games. Staying in the NFC West to a degree here, the Niners and the Seahawks, the other 405 game, the next 3 games are all 425. So this is another line. This is the other line that baffled me this week. San Francisco's at home. San Francisco was a 9.5 point favorite earlier in the week. The line's dropped to 8.5. 40.5 at the total. 66 degrees at the game. Chance of rain. I'm sure Trey Lance loves to see that. Can you explain to me why the Niners are laying this many points? The Niners looked awful in week 1. And I'm sorry, Trey Lance was not good. Now, I get it was pouring. Like, I understand all that. But it's not like there's a whole litany of evidence that he's great when it's not pouring. And the Seahawks, who I don't believe in, I do not think the Seahawks are a very good team. They beat Denver. They won the game at home. Like, why is San Francisco laying more than a touchdown in this game?
Yeah, shame on me for taking the 49ers to cover against the Bears in week 1. I even said I don't trust in Trey Lance. I don't know why you should lay this big of a number on him until he proves that he can actually play quarterback. But yet I still took the 49ers in week 1. I'm not making that same mistake again, especially because it looks like we're going to see similar weather for the 49ers in this game. So, and if it comes down to who can run the ball more effectively, the Seahawks have a very good rushing attack. Geno Smith did look all right, or he looked even good in the first half of that Seahawks-Broncos game. They probably did deserve to lose that game, especially if you look at it statistically. The Broncos had 2 goal line fumbles. But the Seahawks can run the ball. So should the 49ers be favored just based kind of solely on their defense? Yeah, probably. But 8.5 points, and it was 9.5 earlier this week. I will not be laying any points on the 49ers until I see what Trey Lance can do, or at least until I see him play well, because I haven't seen that yet. So I don't know why people would believe that he's all of a sudden going to turn into a good quarterback overnight.
So you laid out the exact case I feel in this. I have Seattle as well. I don't understand. I think Seattle, look, I wouldn't pick it. I think Seattle can win this game. Like, if Trey Lance is not good, why couldn't he win? Why can't they win the game? I don't know. Look, I think the Niners are a much better team roster-wise, but it's a divisional game. Those games typically tend to be close. It could be in bad weather again. And while I am not a Geno Smith truther by any stretch of the imagination, he was better than Trey Lance week 1. Now, here's the hard part about anything, predicting anything, gambling on anything in week 2. You don't know what is fact and fiction from week 1.
Right.
You don't know what is, look, like we were talking about the Ravens earlier, right? And the Jets being able to stop them running the ball. Is that because the Jets are going to have a great run defense this year? Or because the Ravens are going to stink running the ball? You don't know.
Right.
Like, you kind of have to take a guess. So there's a lot of variables to this. But in this case, I'm just taking the points. Like you're giving me 9.5. I mean, even if the Niners win the game by 9 points, I'm good. So I need to see more out of Trey Lance and not these videos that have surfaced this week. Okay. I need to see good Trey Lance. I need to see like, hey, I can throw a pass, Trey Lance.
Right.
But I will say real quick, because we have a second, if he doesn't play well this week and they lose this game, next week they're on Sunday Night Football in Denver.
Ooh.
Is he starting as his quarterback?
I mean, maybe, especially if it rains a lot today, maybe they'll just he does kind of have an out in the fact that the first 2 games aren't exactly good weather for throwing the football. So, yeah, I think they've kind of dug their grave. I think they kind of have to stick with him at least for the first half of the season at this point. It looked bad if they all of a sudden this quickly went to Jimmy G.
I am really torn on that, man. I totally agree with you. But there's a part of me, it's like, hey, Trey has a hamstring pull. He's not going to be able to play. Yeah. I mean, couldn't you just see that? Like all of a sudden it crops up on the injury report. Yeah, he's got a little bit of something. He can't play this game. We're going to need Jimmy to come in and play. I mean, wouldn't be the first team that did that. All right, let's see how he does though before we start talking about all that. 425, Jerry World for the second week in a row. The Cowboys at home taking on the Bengals. Now, with Dak Prescott, I'm guessing the Cowboys would have been favored in this game.
Yeah, they were 2-point favorites on the look-ahead line.
Okay, so you know how. Okay, yeah, there you go. So they were 2-point favorites. Sounds about right. They're not 2-point favorites anymore. The Bengals laying 7.5 on the road because Dak Prescott and Cooper Rush, despite what Phil Simms says, not the same people. And so the line was 7. It's moved to 7.5. And the total's 41.5. And of course, no weather concerns there with the roof. Let's just say what it is. We both feel the same way here. Bengals should win this game by a touchdown or more, right? I mean, this should not be all that difficult. And if it is, it's a major, major red flag for Cincinnati.
Yeah, I mean, even with Dak Prescott last week, the Cowboys' offense looked terrible.
It's not good.
Even with Dak Prescott in the game, and now you're gonna have Cooper Rush be your quarterback. Like that's 30th in yards per play last week. I just looked it up really quick. 3.8 yards per play with Dak Prescott, and now you're gonna toss in Cooper Rush. And I will say the Buccaneers' defense is better than the Bengals, but Dak Prescott is certainly a lot better than Cooper Rush. So I have no faith in this Cowboys team. A big part of it, and I think I talked about it last week, is Mike McCarthy. I'm just not a fan of. I think Mike McCarthy's the worst coach in the NFL as well. So I think Bengals, and I think a lot of the issues that Joe Burrow had last week, I'll contribute it to the fact he didn't play in the preseason, because I think quarterbacks who didn't play in the preseason, I think ended up going 3-9. I think it was in week 1. So it might come out that you need some reps in the preseason to kind of get going. So I'll blame Joe Burrow's interceptions on that. I think he'll look a lot sharper today. So I will lay the points with the Bengals.
So we don't have to go further on this because we both have the Bengals. I will say, though, if there's one path for Dallas in this game, it's Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence just wrecking the game and just sacking Burrow over and over and over. Like, that is a concern. Look, we both think the Bengals are going to win and win going away in this game. They don't. To me, it's a huge red flag. But, like, the Bengals at some point, can you block anybody? Can you block anybody? I mean, I get the Steelers have a good front. I understand that. 7 sacks? That's insane. Half of that's a bad total. Half of that, you give that up every game, you're up over 50 for the season. So, I mean, 3 sacks is a great day for a defense. 7?
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, man, like, you went out and spent money, you got these upgrades, but then, of course, they didn't bother to play any of them in the preseason because, God forbid, they were to go out there and play a half or a quarter or whatever, and they look like hell. Now, look, Dallas, as much as I think they're limited today, one thing they can do is get after the quarterback. And I think they can do it. Now, I don't think it's going to be enough. But that is my concern with the Bengals moving forward. Like, bro, you got to block. I mean, Burrow's got to help him out too by getting the ball out a little bit. But I watched that game. At least 5 of those sacks was just, he had no chance. I mean, just immediate, just car wrecks. Got to see more out of the Bengals. Got to get better up front.
Yeah, right. Yeah, really quick. Yeah, I'll just say how stupid I felt on Sunday, because all offseason I was going on all these shows talking about how much better the Bengals offensive line was going to be this year. They got 7 sacks in the first game. So maybe it's a lack of preseason reps. I certainly hope so for their sake.
It better be, because I know I've had a handful of Bengals fans say to me, it didn't matter last year. Bro, it's going to matter. Like, at some point, regression of the mean is a real thing. All right. Let's go to a game we disagree on. 425, Denver, Houston, Denver at home. The fighting Nathaniel Hackett's, the fight, let's ride. They rode all the way to a 64-yard field goal attempt, which is interesting to stop riding at that point. And they missed. In fact, they missed twice. Denver at home, big favorite, laying 10 points against the Houston Texans, who are 0-1 after a weird tie. It's actually going to be hot as hell in Denver today. It's 85 degrees, which in Denver is a heat wave. Denver laying the 10, minus 460 on the money line. Totals 45.5. You and I are going to split company here. Your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I like the Broncos here. I know they lost. They got upset pretty bad by the Seahawks on Monday night, but I talked about it before. I think the Broncos actually severely outplayed the Seahawks. 2 goal line fumbles. It's going to be tough to win games that way. That's 14 points right there. You look at yards per play in the opening week. 6.8 yards per play for the Broncos, near the top excuse me, of the NFL. And even though the Texans did manage to play to a tie to the Colts, did not look good offensively. 4.4 yards per play, all the way down at 28th. Only the Steelers, Cowboys, Rams, and Bears had worse yards per play than the Texans. So home opener for the Broncos. They also have historically had a very good record in September at home. I think the Broncos run away with this one. I think last week was a little bit of an outlier, a game they should have won handedly, and they didn't. I think they come out strong and handle the Texans, who I kind of had high hopes for the Texans during the offseason, but not so much after week 1.
So I'm going to take Houston to cover the spread, and I got them at plus 9.5. My reasoning is this. Denver definitely outplayed Seattle, okay? But it's a little bit overstated, in my opinion, how outplayed Seattle was. Denver fumbled twice at the goal line, but one of those was on a 4th down where they got stuffed anyway. So they were going to lose the ball there either way.
Fair point.
Okay. The touchdown throw to Judy deep down the field, he's really lucky he wasn't picked off. Like, a halfway decent corner probably picks the ball from right to his hands. It was a bad throw. It was underthrown. Then he had another ball to Diggs in the end zone that should have, absolutely been picked off. He basically threw a punt, and Diggs dropped it in the back of the end zone right to him. So the Broncos, like, they did fumble twice at the goal line, but one of them was irrelevant. The other one, of course, mattered. They threw 2 balls that easily could have been picked, one of which I would say should have been picked. And both, and that led to 10 points, by the way. They also stopped Seattle on 4th and 1 inside the Broncos 10-yard line, where Geno Smith slipped and couldn't get to the line. So I think it was actually a lot more of like an even game. Now, I think as the game went on, Denver outplayed them more and more. Like, the first half, I thought Seattle actually outplayed them. The second half, Denver played much better, had some issues. The other thing Denver did last game was they took 1 million penalties. Took 1 million penalties. I think they took 12 for the game. I believe it was 11 or 12. But here's my reasoning most of all. I don't trust Hackett at all after that game. Not at all. Like, I think Denver's going to win this game, but I think it's going to be by like a touchdown. I think Houston's going to hang around. Now, it might even be a backdoor cover by the end of the game. I could see it being something where it's like 30-14 and, Houston just scores some garbage time. But it's a lot of points for me to lay on a team that I don't want to say I don't believe in Denver, but I don't know what they are yet. I don't know what I don't know what I believe with Denver. I think they're talented, but I also don't love the coach. And I Russell Wilson in week 1, I don't know how you felt about him. I thought he was okay. I didn't think he was any more than that. He did not look like a top flight quarterback in that game. Maybe he does today. Didn't look like it for me in week 1.
Yeah, I won't argue with that. It's a tough game to call.
All right. Let's go to the last 4 o'clock game, 4:25. Raiders, Cardinals at Allegiant Stadium. Raiders are 5.5-point favorites in this game, laying 5.5. 51.5 is the total. It's the highest total on Sunday by a considerable margin. Your thoughts on Raiders and Cards? 2 0-1 teams that whoever loses this game is going to be in a world of hurt.
Yeah, this is the game where the line, I think, has moved quite a bit without any kind of injury news, whereas that's going to cause a line in other games. Open at 3.5, that's where I got it. I would probably still lean Raiders at 5.5, and certainly makes it quite a bit tougher at that number. But Cardinals were the worst team in week one, in my opinion. They were terrible on offense. They were terrible on defense. They gave up 7.4 yards per play. They only gained 4.5 yards per play. Patrick Mahomes, 30 of 39 for 9.2 yards per attempt. And I will say, hand up, I got that game dead wrong. I took Cardinals to cover last week, and the Chiefs won by a million. We've covered that at the top, but that was a tough look for your boy.
I want to know real quick, how long did you have to go into that game before you realized you made a terrible mistake?
About like the first 5 plays. I was like, oh boy, this is
I actually thought of you. I was like, when it was 14-0, I was like, he's got to know he's in a world of hurt right now, because the Cardinals, there's not an ounce of resistance. I mean, just going up and down the field. But in any event, all right, so you got Raiders 3.5. You would have taken them maybe even a 5.5.
Yeah, I actually thought the Raiders kind of outplayed the Chargers. They outgained them in yards per play. Derek Carr got 3 interceptions, which kind of killed the Raiders against the Chargers. If he doesn't throw 3 interceptions, I actually think they win that game. But yeah, I am now all of a sudden extremely low on the Cardinals. I thought they didn't play with any energy. I didn't think the coaching was good. I didn't think Kyler Murray looked good. I think their secondary was
nothing looked good.
Nothing looked good.
Nothing.
So it's
loud.
Tough for me to justify a bet on the Cardinals in this one. So I'll take the Raiders to cover.
So this is one of these games I look at, and I think anything's possible. The Cardinals could look like crap again and get beat by 20 points. They could come out and be embarrassed and play much better and win the game. The Raiders, I agree with you, man. If Carr doesn't throw 3 picks, they probably would have won that game against the Chargers. On the flip side, they gave up 6 sacks, and Carr was responsible for 4 of them. I don't know what to do with all that information. Then you look at the injury report. So Andy Isabella is out, which whatever. Rondell Moore's still out with a hamstring. That, of course, matters. So they're thin there. They've got a bunch of guys questionable. J.J. Watt, Trayvon Mullen, Justin Pugh, Jalen Thompson. Right? So who the hell knows? All those guys were limited on Friday. The Raiders are missing their center. They're missing Trayvon Morig. They're young and actually like the one guy in the secondary who I'm excited about. Like he's out for this game. Denzel Perriman's out for this game. I don't know what to do with this. So I took the Raiders money line. I just said, you know what? Minus 230. I'll take the Raiders money line. I don't know who the hell's going to win. I don't know what it's going to be by, but I think the Raiders are better. I think they're at home. I think they win by like a field goal, 3 or 4 points. So that's why I just earlier in the week, the line as you have it was 3.5. I wasn't sure. I said, you know what? I'm going to play it what I think is safe and take the money line. But of all the games this week, if you said to me, what's the game that like, who the fuck knows? This is the game. Anything's on the table for Raiders Cards. But I wasn't overly enthused by hearing Kingsbury on the radio after the game last week. He's like, I got to be honest. We were just surprised at how good the Chiefs were. Like, what? Like, you were surprised. You coached Mahomes.
Right.
How are you surprised? Like, you were surprised that they were good? That was yikes. So not feeling great about that. All right, let's get into the Sunday night game. Green Bay and Chicago. So the 0-1 team here, surprisingly, is the Packers, who got waxed by Minnesota. I actually went back and watched the game. I don't think that it was quite as bad. I watched it like during the back half of the Sunday night game. It was hideous. But the Packers still were not good offensively. They did not do anything. Rodgers was complaining about the young receivers all throughout summer, and it showed up. But the Packers are minus 480 here on the money line. 10.5 point favorites. The total currently sitting at 41.5. And I'll let you lead off. You got great value here on your bet.
Yeah, I'm trying to do this year is place all my bets either Sunday night or Monday morning. I did it with this, and I'm glad I did because I took the under, and the total opened at 44, so it has moved significantly down to 41.5. 41.5 is where I set the total, so I think it's at the right number now. But I think the spread's probably at the right number too. So I think this is going to be a tough game to kind of decide where the value is. I'd probably still lean the under even at the current total right now. My concern and everyone's concerns about the Packers all offseason kind of came to light in week 1. Aaron Rodgers doesn't really have anybody to throw to. He was visibly frustrated all game. Bad drop. So I will say it does look like Alan Lazard is going to be back in the lineup tonight, I think. Yeah. So maybe, hopefully for Packers fans and bettors, that's going to make a little bit of a difference for them tonight. But then the Bears. Dead last in yards per play. Their offense looked absolutely terrible, even though they won. Obviously, you can blame some of that on the weather, but I mean, we kind of saw what we expected from the Bears. So they won, credit to them, but I think this is going to be a defensive slugfest. I think it's going to be a pretty boring game to watch tonight, honestly.
Okay. So I like the under bet a lot. I think you got great value there, but I also feel like the Packers are going to kill the Bears.
Yeah.
I just think that, look, this is one of these games, and I'm a big believer in this. When a good team has a really bad week and then they play a really bad team, I'm all in on even if the line's big, on the favorite going out and punching the other team in the mouth. And I think that's what's going to happen in this game. I think this game is going to be something like 30-10. I just don't think it's going to be competitive. Look, Justin Fields did not look good. He has no help. The Packers do have a lot of talent defensively. It's at Lambeau. My buddy's actually going to be there. If they lose that game, he's probably just going to keep driving until he hits the lake. I think the Packers win going away. I do. I think they get it straightened out. Look, the Packers got killed last year in Week 1 against New Orleans, and then came back and was the number 1 seed in the conference. I like the Packers here. I think the Packers handle business. I do not think this game is close. If it is, I've got a lot of concerns about the Packers, but I don't think it will be.
I got a couple trends for this game, too, that would kind of support that. These are kind of all going around, but I'm reading it specifically from a tweet from Todd Furman. Rodgers, 20-7 against the spread against the Bears in his career, including cover the spread in 6 straight games against the Bears. Packers have won 11 straight games after a loss and are perfect 11-0 against the spread after their last 11 losses. And Aaron Rodgers against the Bears on Sunday Night Football specifically, 23 touchdowns, 0 interceptions in 6 games. So if you're back in history here, the Packers are the way to go.
The Bears, I know, again, I understand they won the game. You want to give them credit for that. What did they do offensively that makes you think they'll win this game? There's no, I literally don't have any reasoning for thinking that the Bears have any shot in hell of winning this football game. So I will lay the points happily here. All right, I am getting my thing set up here as we are talking. Let's go Monday Night Football. Bills, Titans. They are the early game, if you want to call it an early game, 7:15 Eastern. In Buffalo minus 460. How the mighty have fallen. The Titans were the number 1 seed last year, and they're not currently getting a lot of love. They are a 10-point dog. They were 9.5 earlier in the week as Tennessee tries to avoid going 0-2. You and I are on the same wavelength here, despite the big number.
Yeah, I locked this. This was the first bet I locked in last Sunday because I thought it was going to skyrocket up to like 12. It's only moved up half a point to 10. So obviously I still like it at that number. I set the line at like Bills minus 12.5. The Titans stink. They are exactly who I thought they were. I picked the Giants to beat them outright in Week 1. This Titans team stinks. Derrick Henry, who we are all praising, we're all kissing the feet of Derrick Henry as being the best running back in the NFL. 3.9 yards per carry against the Giants in Week 1. Derrick Henry's, it's over. It was a fantastic couple of years in a row.
Better not be over. He's on my fantasy team.
I was not touching Derrick Henry, the 10-foot ball of my fantasy drafts this year. The writing was on the wall. His production took a big hit last year, and he had the injury issues. 3.9 yards per carry against the Giants, and when Derrick Henry can't run the football, the Titans have nobody else to turn to. So
they're done. Yeah, they're done.
Yeah,
they're well done if he's done. So look, I'm with you 9.5. I got the same number. I think the Bills are going to win this game by 2 touchdowns. The Titans just aren't good. There's nothing about the Titans that scares me. I know last year they went 12-5. Give them all the credit in the world. They had injuries. They still did. They were one of the weirdest 12-5 teams I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, look. The only thing about them I respect, they can. I think Vrabel's a good coach. Although Week 1 was not his finest moment. But I think he's a very good coach, and their defensive front's good. But now they're without Landry for the year. That's a big deal.
Huge.
I love Byard at safety, but what of their corners? Who cares? I'm not scared of their corners. Offensively, the line is not what it once was. Tannehill's a guy. Now you've gotten rid of A.J. Brown. Who the hell scares you on the outside? Nobody. If you're playing Tennessee, you're putting 8 guys in the box and saying, "Go ahead, do anything else." And I think Buffalo in this game is going to tee off. It's a primetime game. It's a home opener. I think Tennessee, that loss to the Giants was huge. Because if you win that game and you go and lose in Buffalo, you're like, all right, you know what? We're okay. We're 1-1. Not a big. Now you're 0-2. The only thing helping them is the division stinks. Okay, that's it. But outside of that, no, they're in deep pain. And let's close on two teams that are anything but in deep pain. They played very well. Both of them did week 1. Philadelphia, Minnesota. Game is at Lincoln Financial Field in the city of brotherly love. Line is Philly -2.5. Over under high. It's 50.5. I didn't go anywhere near the total. I know you didn't either. Your thoughts on this game here as we wrap up week 2?
Yeah, the line was interesting this game because it opened at 2.5, went down to 1. Now it's back up to 2.5. So it's kind of fluctuating. Now it's back to where it began. I like the Vikings. They're my upset pick of the week here. I'm taking them to win outright. I like both teams, like you mentioned. I was high on both of them heading into the season, but I'm just a little bit higher on the Vikings. I think they just have more offensive weapons. I'm still not completely sold on Jalen Hurts just quite yet. And the Vikings looked better in week 1. If you want to talk about week 1, they looked better in week 1 against a better team than the Eagles looked against a worse team. So this offense, by the way, explosive. Kevin O'Connell's, really breathing an extra, breath of life into this offense. Justin Jefferson might be the best player in the NFL right now. Dalvin Cook looked pretty good. Rushed for 90 yards against the Packers in the opening game. So, I like the Vikings to win outright.
All right. I will be brief here because we're coming up against kickoff. I like the Eagles. I got them at -1.5. They're at home. They're at home in the game. I think it's a toss-up. If it was in Minnesota, I would have taken Minnesota. I like Philly's defense better. Is that and being at home that's what it came down to for me. Also, Kirk Cousins in prime time. I don't know how much stock you put in this, but he's been brutal in his career. So I don't put a lot of stock in that actually. But I'll take the Eagles. I think the Eagles 1.5 at home. It's a tough place to play. Road game for the Vikings. I think both of these teams, by the way, are playoff teams. But I like the Eagles in the game. Real quick, 2 things. A, what was your bet on Thursday night? So we can
the over. It lost.
Okay, I actually won this. You're going to be surprised. I took the Chargers to cover.
Oh,
that's right. I thought the Chiefs would win. I had the score. I got a 4.5. I had the score 27-23. It was 27-24. So.
Well done.
I got that done. Do you have the units for both of us here as we wrap up?
Yeah, you finished in week 1. You went 7-8 -2.42 units because 2 of your wins were pretty heavy money line favorites. So
okay, so I was barely below the even line.
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't calculate mine, but like I said, for the whole week I went 8-8 plus 0.86 units. So take away Thursday Night Football losses, like 8-7 for plus 1.6 units or something like that. So I'll have the exact one for myself.
Week 1, not moving a line either way for either one of us very much. We'll see if week 2 is better to us. Listen, we are about 150 seconds away from kickoff for the 1:00 games. Let's win some money. Let's have some fun. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. We enjoyed being here with you. Check out fansided.com/betsided for all things betsided with Ian, Ben Heisler, Peter Dewey, on down the line. All great guys, great content. And then, of course, fansided.com for everything you can check out. Our Twitter handles as well. Follow us, talk with us, yell at us for bad bets, praise us for good bets. Let's have some fun. Week 2 of the NFL kicking off right now. We'll see you again next week.